So we've talked about the strategy on price. We've talked about selecting price. We've talked about how we go about communicating price. Well, let's talk about the things we actually want from an agent. What is it you want from an agent? We have needs as potential consumers, which you all are. Agents pay or charge a fee for their service by way of commission. But what do we expect them to provide in return from that? And if we can just sort of drill down and look at, just some buzzwords and some emotive words that, we really want from our agent. So, as mentioned before, we want expertise first and foremost. Coming back to my Ferrari analogy, if I've got a Ferrari to sell, I want a guy who knows about Ferraris. We want them to understand the market. We want them to understand the location. We want them to have a good track record. Okay? So we need to be comforted that they have expertise. This is what we expect for our money. We also expect service, and the estate agency industry has a really bad reputation for this, and having seen some really shoddy practice firsthand, I can understand why. At the end of the day, you must understand that you, as the potential seller, are the client. The word agency means, that particular person works for you, that agent works for you. And for our fee or for their commission, we as clients expect a certain standard of service. That for me includes regular feedback. It means efficiency. It means accompanied viewings with the agent. It means all kinds of things. In addition to the expertise, I'm looking for service. I want to receive good service as a client. And I think that's the same in any business. We're looking for marketing. You can be the nicest, you can be the cleverest estate agent in the world. You can be, you can have A-grade customer service skills. But without no marketing, it really does fall down. So, what we expect, we want marketing. We want our agent to advertise adequately. We want phone calls. We want emails. We want momentum. We want our agent to offer us a plethora of marketing services and marketing tools that we can feel comfortable will do the job and sell our property. We want trust. Now, I know it's not a word that normally goes hand in hand with estate agents, but we do want trust. We want to trust that our estate agent is working for us and not against us. We want to trust our estate agent that they have our best interest at heart. Okay? And we want to trust our agent that they will offer us the expertise, the service, the marketing that we deserve as clients. We're looking for value for money. I think we're all looking for value for money. We're all consumers at the end of the day. And I think it's important to understand, where does your money go? So, as I mentioned before, there's a myriad of estate agents that charge different fees. Some are very expensive, some are more competitive. But I think we want all these things, but we also want value for money. We don't want to feel shortchanged. We want to feel that, for our commission that we're paying to our agent, that we received good value for money. Accessibility. The biggest gripe that a lot of people have with agents is that they can't access them. They're nowhere to be found. They come to take on the property. It's all great at the beginning, but then you get passed over to 2 or 3 juniors, and all of a sudden you've lost continuity or you've lost accessibility with your agent. So, not only do we want all these other things, we want our agent to be accessible to us. We want to know, again, that our agent is working for us and that we can at any time pick up the phone, send an email, get together for a coffee, and really understand from our agent, what's happening, what's going on. We want our agent to be accessible, and too often, agents aren't. They disappear, hide behind the fact that maybe the marketing campaign isn't going so well. And there's a saying in estate agency, you always hear from your agent when things are going well, but you never hear from them when things are not going so well. And it's in fact when things are not going so well that you actually need them the most. So you need them to be accessible. We want strategic advice. We want expertise, and this comes back a little bit into expertise, but we want strategic advice. We want our agent to be a strategist. If our agent, like I say, only offers us a select handful of these elements, expertise, service, trust, yeah, they can be trustworthy, they can offer us good value for money, but if they've got no strategic insight as to how to get us the best price, or what steps to take with the marketing campaign, how can we respond to changes in the marketplace, how can we respond to changes in legislation, how can we be proactive if things aren't moving the way we hope they're moving. So you want your agent to provide strategic advice. We want protection, and I think this is a word that I think really is synonymous with estate agency and should be. An agent, first and foremost, whether you're a literary agent, a casting agent, a sports agent, you actually are there to protect your client. You are there to look out for your client's best interest. You are there to work for your client, not the other way around. And I think, that is an element far too often overlooked in this business. We want protection. Agents are there to protect our clients. And when we say protection, we don't mean, standing in front of them in a bar fight. We mean we want to protect them in terms of defending their price, defending their position, never doing anything that would put them at a disadvantage, always being seen to, act as that intermediary, act as a buffer between the client and the seller and the buyer. Too often, lazy agents are happy to put buyers and sellers together. In other words, they'll send them directly round to the seller's home, and all of a sudden you are now left as a seller exposed to a potential buyer. And while that might seem fine, and you think, well, what's the problem with that? I want to kind of get to know who's going to buy my property a little bit more detail. The problem with that is that an agent actually acts as that buffer, and an agent should be able to take all the emotion out of a transaction, because believe you me, somewhere down the line there's going to be hiccups, there's going to be an emotional problem, there's going to be demands made that one side maybe doesn't agree with. And these conversations, if you're not protected, and if your agent hasn't protected you, could actually backfire. And when we say protection, we also mean legal protection. By your agent understanding things like the consumer protection regulations, understanding the things that must be disclosed, being a good negotiator. That's what an agent should do. So the word protection for me is really, really important. And all the advice I'd give anybody who is enlisting an estate agent is just to remember this: you are the client, and the agent works for you. And if you ever get the impression that that's not happening, then you really need to reassess your agent working relationship or your arrangements. And understanding. We talked about this, in one of our first slides. We need to understand. We want understanding from our estate agent. We want them to understand and appreciate why we're actually selling. What's driving this move? If our agent understands why we're doing what we're doing and the needs associated to it, then we can be confident that they are adequately representing us to the marketplace and in conversations with interested parties. So, we've got all of those things where we want our agent to, all these list of requirements that we want from our agent. So if we look back on it, it's quite interesting. So, the things that we want from an agent: we want expertise, we want service, we want marketing, we want trust, we want value for money, we want accessibility, we want them to be strategic, we want them to protect us, and we want understanding. Now, if you look at those lists of what I call emotive needs, that's quite a lot, isn't it? I mean, this is a lot of responsibility that an estate agent should take very, very seriously. And these are the things that, as potential sellers, you should be looking for. And a good agent should be providing all of this. Doesn't mean that you appoint an agent who's only giving you 2 out of 7. You want somebody who can give you the whole package. And I think those, in my experience, are the people that make the best agents. So let's have a look at things that your agent should be telling you, but probably isn't. So we've already got our list of needs and requirements and the things that we want from our estate agent, but what should they be telling you in addition to how wonderful your kitchen is and the price and how they got there and relative marketing strategy? Well, there are things that they should be telling you and things that you could be asking them, and this is advice that I'm giving to say, don't let your agent walk out the door without them telling you this information. So that includes how much they actually charge, whether that's inclusive of VAT, how and where will they market your property. It's important to understand that we're paying our commission fees. How does our what will our agent do for that money? Where will they advertise the property? How will they market it? Is it just going to be a listing in the window? Are they going to be online? You want to know the specifics of what you're paying for. You want to understand how long is your agency agreement. And again, most standard agency terms are 3 months, and you'll see them there on the contract that you sign. It says 12 weeks. Don't make that mistake of committing that long. Ask your agent about flexible arrangements. Can the commitment term be shorter? What are my rights of termination? How much notice can I give? There are many things that you can negotiate into an estate agent's agreement, and things that you really must be finding out contractually. It's amazing again how many agents won't actually inform a new client about their rights of cancellation. And here's a very important point that, again, to this day, a lot of sellers just don't know because they've never been told. Your rights of cancellation are this: that you can literally cancel the contract with an estate agent within 14 days of signing the original contract. And that is your legal statutory right. So even if you have an estate agent coming into your home, you've really liked them, you've got all those things like trust and confidence in their expertise, you can still sign the contract, but you have 14 days in which you are allowed to cancel that contract. The biggest thing as well is that your agent must point out your rights of cancellation. If your agent doesn't make this clear, they are actually in breach. And what that does mean is that effectively you could then enforce the contract to be performed for nothing. So, there are things in place that, protect you as consumers from agents not pointing out your statutory right of cancellation. Now, once you sign the contract, you actually, the biggest misconception is, or the biggest problem with this is, I've got 14 days to cancel. Maybe I'll sit tight and think about it, but I don't want to lose any time. I want to get on with this right away. Now, an agent cannot be allowed to market your property unless you have given specific implied authority that the marketing can begin within the 14-day cancellation period. So this is a very important point. So you have 14 days in which to cancel the contract from the point that you agree to it. But by law, an estate agent cannot begin to market that property until that cancellation period has expired, unless you, as the potential seller, give explicit or implicit authority in which the agent can begin to market the property within the 14-day period. Okay, very important. The other thing as well is that this does not affect your statutory right to cancel. Okay, now my only advice here is that you need to look at the contracts, because some agents may say, well, okay, if we begin marketing within the 14-day period only for you to cancel, you may have to reimburse certain marketing costs. And that's just something you might have to bear, and understandably so if agents have already begun spending money on photography and advertising, which, if their contract makes clear, they can recoup if you cancel after the 14-day period. But you can begin marketing the property straight away, but you've got to give your agent authority to do it. But your agent must tell you your rights of cancellation. It doesn't have to be on the contract. Your rights of cancellation can be oral, they can be sent to you in an email, but at all times I would always ask my clients, I'd make them aware of their rights to cancel, and I would also make them aware that in order for me to progress and proceed with the instruction, I need actually their authority that I can do so within the cancellation period. Okay? Very important. Consumer protection regulations. This, could you be at risk of your agent? Now, I'll tell you something very, very simply. If you want to understand how good your agent is or how much expertise that you've got, just ask them, can you tell me a little bit about the consumer protection regulations? What do they mean? And, the answer you'll probably get is this. Well, the consumer protection regulations, well, it's like if I went and buy a TV and the TV doesn't work, that's my consumer protection. I can change it, innit? And I'm sorry to be so kind of general about it, but actually that's the kind of knowledge that a lot of agents have about CPR. And it's absolutely puts you at risk, because there used to be a piece of legislation called the Property Misdescriptions Act, 1991. And back in the Property Misdescriptions Act, you could actually omit a particular fact about a property, and if it was omission, it was deemed a mistake. Now, under consumer protection regulations, you could be what's called vicariously liable if anybody suffers loss as a result of the negligence of either you or your agent. And I could do a whole other seminar about consumer protection regulations, but I'm just going to sum this up for you in a nutshell. The consumer protection regulations basis is this. You could be at risk because of your agent. The consumer protection regulations mean that you must disclose, whether you're an agent or a seller, any information that a buyer may find influential in a transactional decision. And I'll just say that again. The consumer protection regulations is a piece of legislation that governs what is deemed as a transactional decision, or information that should be a transactional decision. So for example, if me as a seller, I'm aware that my neighbour upstairs plays the drums between 10 and 11 o'clock at night and it's really loud, and my agent understands that and hears that, if that information is not passed on to a potential buyer, then effectively you are both in breach of the consumer protection regulations, and should the buyer suffer loss as a result of that purchase, in other words, the property all of a sudden is, they have to reduce the price, or they can't sell it for much as they thought they could because of this problem, you will be liable to be sued under the law of tort for negligence. And that's both you and your agent. So again, we come back to the word protection. Your agent must be there to protect you. And I think, it's clear that it's no longer acceptable for agents to be misleading. There used to be, all kinds of photos of, certain angles, not showing the kind of, demolition site in the background from a rear aspect. All information that could have a bearing on anybody's decision to even view a property is what we call transactional. So make sure your agent is aware of consumer protection regulations, and it's a simple litmus test for expertise. If they start umming and ahhing, kindly show them the door and ask them to get educated so that you don't end up being sued for lots of money. And that quite simply is a fundamental replacement of the whole Property Misdescriptions Act. It's all about consumer protection regulations. So Don't be at risk because of a poorly qualified agent. Okay, it's the litmus test for expertise. If you want to know how much your agent really knows, ask them about CPR, and the response that you get will give you enough confidence that they know enough, that they will be able to protect you and that they can convey and act for you in the right way. Money laundering requirements. Again, the annual money laundering scheme governed by HMRC requires all clients to submit know your customer documentation to their estate agents, at the point of instruction. This means you have to provide proof of address, which normally is either a bank statement or a recent utility bill or a council tax bill. You also have to provide a photocopy, a photo ID, and this would normally be obviously a driver's license and passport. Again, if your agent isn't actually requesting these kind of documents for you, it's very probable that they're flaunting, HMRC money laundering requirement rules in terms of how this information is processed and how this information should be stored. So again, if you want to really pick and understand the efficiency or the expertise of an agent, ask them about consumer protection, ask them what their money laundering requirement policy is. Because if they're not asking you as a customer to basically sign ID or hand over ID, you could be considerably at risk.